This week we're going to be talking about the tragic River Phoenix, who had so much potential, was such a good actor, and had his whole life ahead of him when it all came crashing down in front of the Viper Room one Halloween night in 1993. Hi everyone, and welcome to Tragic Hollywood's Star of the Week. This week's star was tragic and died extremely young at the age of 23 on Halloween night in 1993. His name was River Phoenix. That's who we're going to be talking about. If you like my content, please like and subscribe. Do all of the things. Please support non-AI channels like mine because they're becoming more rare. Watch my videos. That would be great. And check out my books on Amazon. Tragic Hollywood, Beautiful, Glamorous, and Dead. Tragic Hollywood, Beautiful, Glamorous, and Still Dead. And my novel, Goodbye, Angel, Goodbye. River Phoenix is in my book, Tragic Hollywood, Beautiful, Glamorous, and Dead, the first book. This is his chapter. So we're going to be reading from the book today, and we're going to be talking about River Phoenix. So let's get started. River Phoenix had a very challenging and tough start in life. His parents were a couple of hippies from the 60s who got together by the father picking up the mother as she was hitchhiking in Northern California. Yep. 5 kids later, they were living in Venezuela. They were a member of a cult called the Children of God. It was a really weird cult. A lot of people joined cults in the 70s because I guess that's what you did in the 70s was you joined a cult. And they joined a cult. This is a strange cult where they had weird sexual practices, and there's a lot of rumors that kids in this cult were sexually abused. They didn't think anything about letting parents have sex in front of children and people who weren't married having sex in front of children, and nobody really cared. Sex was just like eating a burrito or something. And on top of this, they were very poverty-stricken. They were so poverty-stricken that that they used to send River and his younger sister Rain to sing on the streets because River could actually play the guitar. He would play the guitar, and him and his little sister would sing on the streets in Venezuela in order to make money from tips. And that was part of the way they got by. I mean, they were living a really miserable, meager existence in Venezuela. By the way, River was named after the River of Life in Herman Hesse's novel Siddhartha. He had a sister, Rain, and her name was Rain Joan of Arc. And the little sister was named Summer. And then, of course, River's famous brother, Joaquin. I don't know how he ended up with a semi-normal name, but other interesting thing about River is if you look at a family portrait, River doesn't look at all like anyone in his family. He's just this outlier, beautiful, even beautiful features, blonde hair, tousled blonde hair. Everyone else had dark hair. So it's kind of weird. I don't know what's going on there. At any rate, I'm going to read this part in my book about what happened and why they eventually left South America. In 1973, everyone thought it would be a good idea to join a religious cult because that's what everyone did. River's family joined the Children of God cult and spent the next several years starving missionaries in South America. The family was so poor that young River and his sister Rain would have to go onto the streets as a musical duo with River on guitar and Rain on vocals to solicit change for food. The Children of God were well known for their, shall we say, broad-minded social practices, which included free love, polyamory, and allowing children to sleep with their parents while they had sex. There's nothing like that good old-time religion. Eventually, starvation and poverty overpowered Arlene and John's devotion to the cult, and they stowed away on a freighter bound for the United States. Some people have all the interesting childhood experiences. River was scarred for life from that horrendous experiment that was his early life, and he would draw on these emotions later in his work. So they ended up in Hollywood, as I already read, and because River was such a cute kid, and they needed money, again, this mom was a stage mom. She started trying to get her kids into show business right away. And with River, she actually really succeeded. I'm going to read this part in my book about River and why he stood out. River was a standout star from the beginning. There was just something about this kid, an aura that would scream movie star. He had long, soft, sandy hair and deep-set, fiery eyes that would fix people with a "you can't bullshit me" look. I mean, he was really intense looking, even as a young kid. Because he'd seen shit, you know? He was immediately cast in the short-lived television series 7 Brides for 7 Brothers. He was then cast in a series of small but memorable roles in a made-for-TV movie and in made-for-TV movies until his big break in 1986 when he was cast in the offbeat sci-fi movie Explorers alongside a young Ethan Hawke. He caught the attention of Rob Reiner, who cast him in the coming-of-age film Stand By Me. That's the movie we all remember him in. He had to dye his hair and cut it really short. He was the tough kid from a hard, rough, broken home who ended up having a heart of gold. That's the movie that I remember seeing him in. And I thought he did such an amazing performance in that movie. I was like blown away by his performance and how young he was at that time. Because of his phenomenal success in Stand By Me, he was cast in a series of movies, really good movies. He was cast in The Mosquito Coast with Harrison Ford. And then he was cast again with Harrison Ford in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. He was cast in another movie called A Night in the Life of Jimmy Reardon and Running on Empty. He gave amazing performances in all of these movies. So thus, River became, guess what, the primary breadwinner for his family. I don't know what his father was doing all this time, but he became the primary breadwinner for his family at this time. The other kids were trying to break into the movies as well. They have the same agent as River, but they weren't succeeding like River was, and they were still really young. He was the oldest, so he was able to be cast in all of these roles. And he became very well known and very well loved. And he developed very quickly an extremely squeaky clean reputation. He was kind of on all the teen magazine covers because he looked sweet and innocent. Although, if you look at pictures of him when he was around this period, he does have a very intense look. He had a very old soul because of his horrendous, awful childhood and what he went through. You could tell just by looking at him. He looked like that haunted look in his eyes, like Vietnam, that like war vets have. Okay, that's how traumatized he was from his childhood. So I'm kind of guessing that maybe that's what happened to River and why he fell into addiction so quickly, whereas friends of his were able to take drugs and never really become addicted to them, like Keanu Reeves, who was one of his very best friends. Did drugs with River, and they did a movie together in Idaho, and they would get really messed up. But Keanu Reeves was always able to lay off the drugs. He was never addicted to them. And so it's just two people different. You know, I think maybe Keanu Reeves, I don't know, he's seen some stuff too, and he's had some stuff happen in his life. But I don't think he had the horrendous childhood that River did. I'm going to read this part in my book. In 1991, he starred in his first adult role as a gay street hustler, aching with unrequited love for Keanu Reeves in My Own Private Idaho. That's such a great movie, you guys. You should see it if you haven't seen it. The two had become fast friends, and in real life, and the chemistry was amazing on the screen. River proved with this difficult role that he was more concerned with becoming a good actor than maintaining his squeaky clean image as America's heartthrob. Yeah, him and Heath Ledger, I think they were vying for America's heartthrob at that time. He immersed himself in preparation for the role, even hanging out with street hustlers and rent boys on the streets of Portland, Oregon, and interviewing them about their lives. It was during the filming of Idaho, during endless frat boy-style sleepovers at director Cass Van Sant's rented home with Flea, the bass player for the Red Hot Chili Peppers. It was a huge band at that time, where River developed a real drug problem. And it seems all drugs imaginable were freely available on the set and freely ingested by all. Despite this, River's hard work paid off, and Idaho was his finest moment, even though the movie didn't appeal to everyone, not even a wide audience. He did such a spectacular job. He should have been nominated for an Academy Award, in my opinion. But this was where he developed a real drug problem, and this is where him and his friends differed. Flea's still around. Keanu Reeves is still around. They don't have horrible drug addiction. River's not still around. Just a few short-lived years after this, he'd be dead from a drug overdose. So it's weird how these things happen. So River was, as I mentioned earlier, the breadwinner now, the sole breadwinner for his family. And this burden weighed on him. He wasn't even barely 20, if that. And he was carrying the burden of all of these people who were depending on him to bring in a paycheck. So in order to escape, he did use drugs. He used drugs to escape, and he also escaped into his music. This was actually his first love. And he has been playing the guitar since he was a child. So he was well versed in the guitar, and he would go into his room and he would usually get high and he would play music or he would listen to music, and that was his escape. And I wanted to read this part in my book that talks about that. Even though the other thing, he had a reputation for being squeaky clean. He was a vegan or vegetarian, and he led a clean life. He was into organic food and natural food and this type of thing. It was a walking paradox, and yet he would take heroin, to escape. So it's kind of a paradox in that regard. Most of his fans had no idea that was what he did. He longed for the stability of a normal family, and once said, when you're making a film, you're a family, but when the film is over, the family is over. That's sad. As Hermann Hesse wrote so perfectly in Siddhartha, dreams and restless thoughts come flowing to him from the river, from the twinkling stars at night, from the sun's melting rays. Dreams and restlessness of the soul came to him. Such a good musician was River that he secured a 2-year development deal with Island Records, and his band, Alika's Attic, which featured Sister Rain as well, rehearsed their first single titled Across the Way in 1989. Another song, The Many Colors, appeared in My Own Private Idaho under the band's label. River always maintained that his family originally came to LA so that he and Rain could become recording artists. At least that's what they told him. It didn't work out. And that acting thing just happened out of financial necessity. I just became a movie star because I had to make money, but I really want to be a recording star. That's, yeah. Sort of like Jim Morrison, that rock star thing kind of happened accidentally because he really, really wanted to be a poet first. But, he had to pay the bills, so that rock star thing happened. He was dead set on making his music a success without the help of his star power and refused to allow his band managers to book gigs using his name. Of course, people always found out anyway and picked Aleka's attic events just to see River. So he's doing okay with his music, and he's doing great with his acting career. So, what could go wrong? What happened, River? In part 2 of my video on River Phoenix, we'll find out how he went from being one of the hottest young actors in Hollywood to dead in about 3 years. The tragedy of River Phoenix, to be continued.